Hi, everybody. It's Debbie from Spooky Things. I hope everything is going well for you. Um, we've got an interesting show tonight. And I hope you guys kind of bear with me on this a little bit. Tonight, we're going to be doing something that's kind of involved, but everybody talks about it. And there's thousands of questions about this particular subject. And I don't have answers to 999.9 of them, but we're going to try to kind of break into it a little bit. And it's the glitch in the matrix and the abnormalities that, what is it? What is it that people are talking about? What exactly are people noticing? And there's a couple of things on here that's really interesting because a lot of people aren't even aware that it's a thing, that it's actually a thing that goes on. But everybody experiences it, and they're just not aware, maybe, that other people are. But these are the same questions that other people are asking too. So, anyway, so again, I'm going to have to put these things back on. They're my bane. And it gets like this reflection in the screen here. It makes me look like I've just got these. Yeah, anyway, that's another show. So, okay, so let's go ahead and basically talk about the theory, the actual theory behind this whole thing. Okay, the glitch in the matrix theory is a modern digital age take on age-old philosophical questions about the nature of reality. It suggests that our universe is actually a sophisticated computer simulation and that weird, unexplainable events are simply bugs or errors in the code. While it gained mainstream fame from the 1999 film The Matrix, the idea has roots in serious physics and philosophy. So basically, a lot of people are like, well, it's just something of the movies. The movies have created this. No, not actually. This is actually a area of study that great minds have been trying to really get more of a handle on. And it is true that it's been more of a digital age kind of a thing in a way. But people have noticed glitches that have gone on before the digital age had occurred. So it's interesting. It's like how could that be without the digital? But it has been happening. The philosophical foundation, simulation theory. The glitch theory usually starts with the simulation hypotheses. Philosopher, Philosophers like Nick Bostrom argue that if a civilization becomes advanced enough to create ancestor simulations, which is highly realistic universes, then it is statistically more likely that we are living in one of those simulations rather than the one base reality. So I guess it begs to differ is this the base or is that the base? And that just kind of throws it all off because there's how many billions of people in the world? How many realities can there be? Is it just up to a person, or is it a thing that exists that everybody experiences rather than So one person experiencing this in very many ways, or a big group of people that experiencing it in different ways. Man, it gets deep when you really get into it. So what qualifies as a glitch? In internet culture and paranormal circles, a glitch is any event that seems to defy the laws of physics or logic. Common examples follow. Everybody's heard about this, the Mandela effect. Large groups of people remembering a detail differently than exists in history. For example, the Berenstain Bears versus the Berenstain Bears. Um, Coming from a German background, as I have half of my background is in German, it would be the Berenstain Bears. I've never heard them referred to as the Berenstain Bears. Um, but seems how that is based really on a more German kind of a background. But I've always known it as the Berenstain Bears. So that one is like, no, that's the only way I've ever remembered them. And here's one that we'll go into a little bit more, deja vu. The feeling that you've experienced a moment before. In the movies, this is explained as the simulation reloading, a segment or a code. Object duplication. Seeing two identical people in the same outfit doing exactly the same thing, often called NPC behavior. And I've experienced that. Deja vu, I experience that like, I don't know, once a week. Yeah. But vanishing objects. I experience that a lot, but I'm not so sure if it's just simply because I just keep losing things. My God, I'll lose 10 things in a day. And that's just in the morning time. But vanishing objects, the disappearing object phenomenon. Yeah, it's a phenomenon around here, I'll tell you, where something you just put down vanishes, only to reappear in an obvious spot later. See, that describes me. I, I don't know if that's just, and the older you get, you question it. It's like, is that just me just forgetting everything that I'm doing? But it's like, I looked in that spot 10 times and it was not there. And I went back and I looked somewhere else and I come back and it's just sitting right there. I can't tell you how many times that happened to me. Moving on. Again, that's a whole nother show. Scientific perspectives. While most glitches can be explained by the quirks of human memory and psychology, some physicists look for signatures of simulated universe. And there's a few of those. And then one of those is pixelation of reality. Some theorists suggest that at the smallest possible scale, the Planck length, space-time might be discrete rather than continuous, much like the pixels on a screen. Information theory. Physicist James Gates Jr. has claimed to find error-correcting codes similar to those used in web browsers, embedded in the equations of supersymmetry that describe the universe. That's interesting. So, while even a lot of these explanations go completely over a lot of people's heads, in the long run of it all, it comes down to mathematics and the digital world, which both have a lot to do with one another. Um, I know in a lot of cases it tends to lose me because I am not a mathematical person. I was horrible at it. Horrible, I say, when I was growing up in school. And in all my years, I got to tell you, I haven't gotten any better at it. So a lot of when they go into it really deep, in theory like that, kind of tends to lose me. And I know I'm not the only one, but this being is like such a deep, deep story about this. This thing just sort of goes so deep that I know I'm far from the only one. This is a difficult subject. It really is. And it's popular a lot because it provides a narrative bridge between the supernatural and the technological. Technological. Hey, there he goes, slaughtering words again. It turns a terrifying or confusing moment into something fixable or logical. It's not a ghost, it's just a laggy server. But a laggy server of what? I mean, I just always got to look, it's like, okay, they're talking about how technology has gotten to the point to where we are actually sitting in a technological living arrangement that we are part of it. Where does it begin? If we're just part of a screen, then where does it even start? Where does it begin? I mean, it's mind blowing to really sit there and think about it. A note on perception: most glitches are actual products of inattentional blindness or confirmation bias. Our brains produce a massive amount of data and often take shortcuts, leading to errors in how we perceive the world around us. That I tend to lean more towards, to tell you the truth. Um, I find it hard to believe that we're all in this big computer game. And come on, I mean, me personally, I have a hard time believing that to be true. Um, I do lean more towards the confirmation bias part of this right here, and that is that the brain is so complicated and so involved, and it stores so much information. Each person stores an unbelievable amount of everything they've seen, they've said, they've done, they remember, oh my God, that the brain itself can get glitched on remembering something. Or the only thing that kind of makes me go back to going, oh, see, we can go back and forth, is when you're talking about the Mandela effect that we're going to be talking about here too. But I do tend to kind of me more in a physiological sense because I relate to things more physiological than I do technical. That's just the way that my mind works. I base it more on biological means because that to me is something I understand more. Other people look at it because they understand the technological end of it. They perceive it more from that end. Um, as that's the concept that I use actually going into my researching with cryptids. I look at it as biologically. Is this biologically possible? Is it, physiologically, can that work? this is the same theory that I use with this. Biologically, I would think that there's more going on with the way that the brain would perceive the information that we're getting it and the way that it processes it versus the technical end that we are part of an animation series. That's just me. Okay, you guys might have a different theory on it, and please, I'd like to hear it. Okay, let's look at the Mandela effect. This is one of the most famous cultural evidences for the glitch theory, um, and as well the simulation hypotheses, which provides a more scientific background. The Mandela effect is collective glitches. The Mandela effect occurs when a large mass of people remembers an event or detail differently from how it is recorded in history. Glitch theorists argue that these are server merges or remnants of a previous version of the simulation. I find that I can't grasp that. So let's, for geography, the memory of a landmass off the coast of Australia. Have any of you ever remembered there is a landmass off of Australia? The reality is none has ever existed. But so many people say, I remember there was a landmass right alongside Australia. Historically speaking, that's not occurred. But how many thousands and thousands of people will say, yeah, I remember that. Branding. Now, a lot of you are going to remember this, and this one affects me too. The Monopoly man wearing the monocle. I know that Monopoly man had a monocle. I remember it. I clearly remember it. The reality, he never wore a monocle. It was never created with him. When he was created and when he was first shown, he has never had a monocle. Yet in my mind, I remember him having a monocle. And there's been other circumstances like that as well. How about this one? Darth Vader says, Luke, I am your father. Right? He never said that. He did not say that. What he actually said was, no, I am your father. I swear I can. Maybe it's just because so many people have ran that, Luke, I am your father. And I've watched the movie like a million times, but I still remember him saying, Luke, I am your father. It never happened. He said, no, I am your father. That one got me. Here's some for history. Nelson Mandela. Okay, now this was a big one. Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s. I remember the headlines. I can actually remember reading about it and like it was discussed amongst everybody. Nelson Mandela dying in prison. It never happened. He was released in 1990, but he died in 2013. And I'm telling you, it's like I can specifically remember the big to-do about Nelson Mandela dying in prison. But it's just that's what the Mandela effect is. The simulation hypotheses, the hard science of it all. Okay, so if we're in a glitchy reality, what is the hardware? Philosophers and physicists use a specific logical progression to argue that this isn't just science fiction. There's three possibilities to Bostrom's trilemma. Okay, so philosopher Nick Bostrom suggests that one of the three theories, one of these has to be true. That just one of them. The first one is civilizations go extinct before reaching the post-human stage, which is technological maturity. Okay? So they have to go extinct before they reach that point. Or it could be number two. Post-human civilizations have no interest in running simulations of their ancestors. They don't care. They are like, onward we go. Or it could be the third one. We are almost certainly living in a simulation right now. And that's the one that most people are gravitating to because of what they themselves are experiencing. So, as far as humans today are concerned, it doesn't have anything to do with the past. It doesn't have anything to do with the ancestors, and it has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with what's occurring right now. He said only one of the three has got to be right. So think about the evolution of video games. In 1972, we had Pong. Remember that? The two little things, bink, bink, bink. And I look at it today and I'm like, oh my God. And we sat there and watched that for hours? But we did. But we did. Today we have a photorealistic of open worlds. If you assume any rate of improvement, which obviously you can see, games will eventually become indistinguishable from reality. And I can see that happening today. If that happens, millions of these sims would exist, making the odds of being in the original reality 1 in billions. Which goes back, if you can remember what we were talking about in the very beginning, is there one reality that everybody is a part of, or is it billions because different people have their different realities? So is it one, or is it billions? That leads to different billions of theories that come from that. But I can't, just my experience of watch the kids with the video games. Well, even adults, they become drawn into these, so drawn into these video games with these ultra worlds and these ultra realities and all this kind of stuff. And they're just pulled into it so many times. And I've noticed it in my own family. So many times they become to the point to where they're almost believing that that is reality. This is not real. That is reality. And they just become drawn into that world, especially the young people. And I really think that there's a huge reason of why you're seeing a lot of violence with the young kids, because they can't process this like more like an adult can, and they're so much more enchanted by it and just drawn into it, that they begin to think that this is the reality. And it's scary because it's hard to get them off of it. Once you get them playing this and they get hooked into it, it's like it just won't let them go. And they live like for that video game, because they feel as though they're more of a person in that game than they are out here in reality. And that what's so scary about that is that it's so true for so many people, and almost every family can sit there and say, yeah, we've got one like that in our family. That's scary. So, constraints as evidence. Physicists look at the rules of our universe as potential code limitations. Okay. Now, one rule is the speed of light. That that's real, and that is a real limitation. So think of it as the maximum processing speed of the universe. No information can travel faster than the speed of light because the hardware can't render it. So we're being constrained by the speed of light. Quantization. In physics, energy and matter are not definitively divisible. They come in chunks. Each chunk of this is called a quanta. This is remarkably similar to the pixels or bits on a computer program. So this is what basically, these are the limitations that is held in this matrix of an environment. Most scientists believe that what we call glitches are actually the human brain being a slightly unreliable narrator. We are built to find patterns, and when we can't find one, we prefer a glitch in the system over the idea of our own senses failing us. That's where I lean on. I really do. I mean, I see the video games as exactly that. I see them as something that is man-made, and it's just something. It's a computer, and that's all that there is to it. It's just, there is no. This is my thing. This is my theory. There is no matrix, and it's just the fail sailing of our own system, trying to take the data that it's got and reworking it into what it should be in the way that we perceive things. And it's not safe. So I mean, that is the way I really do tend to see more of it in that sense. um so let's go into something here. The deja vu. This is what I found. So many, the reason I'm picking deja vu more than anything else is because I know more people experience this. Almost everybody I know has experienced this at one time or another. And if deja vu is the glitch where the new feels old, I don't know if anybody of you have heard about this before, but the Presque view is where the known feels hidden, then W.E.B.B is arguably the most unsettling of the three. It is the sensation of the familiar suddenly becoming completely alien. The literal translation of it is, quote, never seen. So everybody thinks that there's only deja vu, but there's actually minimum of three. And it goes into actually more than that. Deja vu is being the most widely known. Um, and then the pressed view is the one that's more likely known about, other than the W.E.B.B. What W.E.B.B feels like. Okay, we know what deja vu is, but we'll go into that as well. W.E.B. is, imagine looking at your own hand and for a split second not recognizing it as yours, or most commonly staring at a word you've written 1,000 times. Now, I have done this. It's like a door, and suddenly thinking, this isn't a word. It looks like a collection of random shapes. Did I spell that right? And I have done that. I have written something and I'm like, is that the way you spell that? Because it looks foreign to me. It's just that's it just doesn't look right. And it's something as simple. I mean, just like door is a very, very simple word. And I sat there and it just doesn't look right. But I myself have done that. It's a momentary loss of meaning. You have the recollection, you know you've seen it before, but you lose the familiarity and it feels brand new and strange. Now, this is the science of it. It's neural fatigue. Researchers believe W.E.B. is caused by the satiation or neural fatigue. The loop. When you focus on a single stimulus, a word, a face, a place, for too long, the neurons responsible for recognizing that thing essentially they tire out. In order to prevent your brain from getting stuck in that infinite loop, it momentarily shuts off the meaning of the stimulus. This is a survival mechanism to force your brain to reset and look at things from a fresh perspective. That makes complete sense to me. Looking at it into that aspect of it, that makes complete and total sense, because you get yourself so involved in thinking how weird that looks. The brain says, okay, that's enough of this crap. Let's just stop. Just turn it off. Enough. Reset. Okay, it looks fine again. That to me makes wild sense because I've experienced it. The voluntary W.E.B. experiment. In a famous 2020 study that won the Nobel Peace Prize, researchers introduced W.E.B. in a lab and they asked participants to write the word "the" over and over again as fast as they could. After about 30 iterations or 60 seconds, 70% of participants experienced W.E.B. They reported that the word "the" began to look like a foreign language, lost in its meaning, or felt like it didn't even exist. I can relate to that. I've experienced that. I can relate to that. So, in my way of thinking, that makes complete and total sense to me. I can see where that's coming from. And I don't see it as a glitch in the matrix in any way whatsoever. I see it just as the brain resetting itself because of it looking for those patterns and looking for rhyme and reason to it. And when it stops seeing the logic of it and it starts looking jumbled, and the brain says, enough, shut it down. That's it. We're done. This is fine. You're reading too much into it. That makes sense to me. So the complete V.E.B.B trilogy, to wrap up the brain glitches, here's how they relate to one another. Deja vu. So the core experience on deja vu is, I've been here before, but I haven't. The brain's error. It's a false positive. Familiarity fires when it shouldn't. Whereas when you're looking at the presect vu is, I know the word, but I can't say it. The search failure is connection between the meaning and the sound has been broken. With the Jemai-vu, I know this word, but it looks like gibberish. That is considered a false negative. Familiarity fails to fire for a known thing. For most people, these are just quirks of a healthy, busy brain. However, if they happen very frequently, multiple times a week, oh, here we go, because I can do it all the time, or are accompanied by a dreamlike state or physical twitching. Y'all will know if I start twitching, but haven't done that yet, so I guess I'm good. They can sometimes be associated with temporal lobe epilepsy. The temporal lobe is the HQ for memory and familiarity. So a small electrical storm there can trigger these sensations intensely. Since we've covered the big three, would you think that makes any sense after hearing about all those? I mean, it's a frustrating thing to experience. But the argument is still very, 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 very defined as to, is that biological, the brain working, or would that be considered a glitch in the matrix? Y'all know what I think, but it's still, I mean, it's just amazing how different people see it in completely different views. But I find the theory about it being more technical fascinating. I really do, because of course you really have to sit back and think, oh yeah, I could be wrong. I could easily be wrong, and it's just because my mind doesn't perceive in the technological sense of it, which I find very, very difficult to do. I only see it in the biological sense. How much am I missing because I can't see the technological end of it? And then that's a real thing. So here's something to kind of think about. It's like a reality check kind of a thing. A lot of times you can kind of keep track and seeing how many times you experience. So the object respawn. So you're searching the room top to bottom, which you're talking about, the keys, a phone, or remote, only to find it sitting in plain sight in a spot you already checked multiple times. The stranger loop. Have you ever seen a person in public who looks so much like someone you know, down to their clothes and walk, that you almost called out to them only to realize that that person is currently in another city? Couldn't possibly be them. The silent sound. Have you ever just been in a crowded place where for just 1 second, and this has happened to me too, everything went completely silent, as if the audio track of the world just cut out? That's happened to me. Again, I'm thinking biological. And of course, then there's false history. When you vividly remember a specific event, a logo, a movie line, different than from what reality actually was on this specific thing. Um, it's very interesting to me that the completely different outlook that people see on this, and it has really produced so many critical arguments over what this has has brought forth. Engagement into this particular reality is different for everybody. So, and it's what makes this such a difficult subject, because it is so very different with almost every single person has a different outlook on it. And it makes the argument extremely difficult because everybody has their own way of looking at it. And when you have so many different ways of perceiving it, it becomes difficult to take it into condensing it and say, this is what's going on, because there's so many ways that people are looking at it from so many different points of views. Um, I don't know. A man by the name of Carl Jung, lineal spaces. That's an interesting one. Why do empty malls, school hallways at night, or abandoned playgrounds feel like deleted levels of a video game? It's like they're so quiet, and it just seems like it's just unrealistic, because these are the places that you see people, you know, gathering in, and it's just always activity going on in them. Um, I know I used to work at a medical center, one of the ones here down by the bay, and they were doing construction on it, and the third floor had been shut down. And it was so weird going up there, because this is a floor that always had so many people on it, people coming, the nurses coming and going, doctors coming, just constant, just a bevy of activity at all times. And when I would go up there, I always also had a paranormal experience in the same place. But it always seemed eerie to me. Even though I knew the reason why it was shut down was because of reconstruction. But it just didn't seem, there's something that didn't seem, it was just something just so not right about it at all. I hated going up there. Just because I was just walking through it, it didn't matter. I hated going up there because it was just so weirdly quiet and empty, and it shouldn't have been. Um, this one particular morning, this is kind of off the subject, but This one particular morning, I was up on the third floor and I was walking through to go to another part of the hospital around the corner from it. You had to go through the third floor to get to there. And I hated it. Even though it was all lit up, it didn't matter. I hated it. Well, when I was walking through there, it was what appeared to be a doctor comes walking towards me. And I thought he was just dressed weird. And I was like, and I had not ever seen him before. You get to know all the doctors there. And he was like, "Good morning." I said, "Good morning." And I walked by and I noticed he's wearing uh like I'm trying to think of what the name of it is that they wore in the 70s, the kind of a suit with like a jacket with a pair of pants to match it. And this one was in like green and kind of like stripes. I'm trying to think a leisure suit. There you go. Like a leisure suit kind of a thing. And I thought, how weird. And it was like, and I went to go to gone, gone. And it was in a hallway. There's nowhere for him to go. In this particular hallway, there was no rooms on the side. It was just a long hallway. And as I thought about it later on, I thought, he didn't make a sound. He didn't make any noise. The man was silent as could be as he walked. No rustling of his clothes, nothing. But just, good morning, how are you? Just as clear as a bell. And he's just gone. So there's that. That was very interesting. And I'm like, well, look at there. Um, famous evidence cases of something very the Lake Michigan ghost plane. Radar picking up objects that vanish instant. Time slips. This is interesting. Stories like the Moberly Jourdain incident, where two women claim to have walked into an 18th century Versailles. That would have been cool. I think that would have been just pretty cool. Um, so when we're talking about the matrix and things go on, like I said, I'm not a mathematical calculating kind of a person. So it escapes a lot for me. I'm trying to get to the, okay, this is interesting. Have you ever experienced the stutter? It's another thing I experienced. That's where you feel like the world around you just kind of stuttered. It just kind of like, it, 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 it just didn't go like smoothly as it normally does. I have experienced that. And it's like, anybody else feel that? Anybody else know? Am I the only one who just noticed that? But that is a very real reality that can happen. I have definitely experienced that before. Um, I'm trying to get to this one. Let's talk about scientific and philosophical frameworks on it. The Actually, we already did. That's the simulation and the double slit theory. Remember, that's where what we were talking about, where quantum mechanics, they behave differently because they're being observed. In other words, the simulation theory. Uh, Nick Bostrom's famous argument: if computing power continues to grow, it's statistically more likely we're in a simulation than the base reality. We had talked about that earlier. And then there's the double slit experiment, a nod to quantum mechanics. Again, I don't understand the quantum mechanics, where particles behave differently just because they are being observed. Does the universe only render what we look at? So if we're not directly looking at it, does anything occur in that particular area? Like the old theory, if a bird or if a bear craps in the woods, I mean, yeah, it to me it's like it doesn't matter if anybody's there or not. Yeah, that does happen. And then it goes into the deja vu versus the perceived vu. It's an interesting theory. It is. And, I've given you all kinds of examples of it. And a lot of people aren't aware that it's so involved. It's not just the thought of, you know, have I done this before? Has anybody else done this before? It just something that happens to occasional, but it happens to just about everybody at one time or another. And it's very fascinating. And believe me, there's a lot of research being done on it. My personal feelings is I do believe it's more brain related, and it's the biological functioning of the brain itself, putting data into order that we recognize. And if we don't recognize it, then it kind of shuts down a little bit and does like a restart until our brain can file it accordingly and to where we can understand what's happening. That's my theory on it. If you've got a different theory, I'd really like to hear it because it's absolutely fascinating. So, anyway, it was a difficult subject because it's so involved. It really is just so involved. So, yeah, let me hear your thoughts on that. I know it's hard. It's hard. Anyway, everybody, I'd like to remind everybody yet once again we have the Deep South Comic Con coming up on August the 8th and 9th, and it's going to be in Enterprise, Alabama, at the Civic Center. And we've got vendors there. There's guests that are going to be there, and I think that you'll have a really good time. Everybody who's been to the events in the past, this will be year 5. Year 5. It's amazing that so many. Yes, that's my door opening, and no, it's for no woo reason. There's a dog, I'm sure, walking in. Yeah, it's a cat. So, oh my goodness. So anyway, yeah, that was not anything paranormal. That was a kitty related normal. So everybody, thank you so much for coming on to Spooky Things with me and hanging in there with me for a really difficult subject. And this was just breaking the very surface of it. And it's tough. It is. It's very tough, but nonetheless, absolutely fascinating. So everybody, you guys have a great week. And next week is going to be an interesting week. We're working on things for next week. Um, Not really sure exactly where we're going to be going with the show next week, what the subject matter is going to be, because I think we might have something really interesting planned for next week. We're still trying to get everything worked out for it, but I think it's going to be really good. So anyway, join us next week, and You guys have a great week, and we'll talk to you then. All right, guys. Bye bye.